Hello and welcome to episode 34 of The Racer's Edge, coming to you from the offices of F1 Racing in Teddington, Surrey, England. Lots to talk about this week as we look ahead to the Indian Grand Prix, but the big news, of course, is the signing of the 19-year-old Russian Daniil Kvyat, driving instead of Daniil Ricciardo at Scuderia Torro Rosso in 2014. We'll be talking to him, we'll be talking to plenty of other people about that decision, and I'm very pleased to say that I'm joined by the editor of F1 Racing, Anthony Rowlinson. And Anthony, my first question to you is, Daniel, what a surprise.
Yep, a surprise. It came a little bit out of the blue. I think it's a really bold and smart decision. I'm really pleased that Red Bull have stuck to their philosophy of promoting young talent and giving a young guy a chance. It's a bit tough on Antonio Felix da Costa, but you know, it's motor racing, it's never easy. One thing I wanted to mention though is that it's not actually totally out of the blue, this Kvyat thing, because I happened to be with Franz Tost in Monza. I was writing a story about Daniil Ricciardo, and I was speaking to Franz about the elevation to Red Bull Racing, and as we were chatting in his little motorhome office, the GP3 race was on, and Danny was doing a great job, and Franz just said to me, yeah, this young Kvyat kid, he's really something, you know, and he made the point that he was really impressed by Daniel's ability to think about a race and drive well under pressure. So obviously he was more impressed than he actually let on at the time.
A couple of things arise from that. One is, there's nothing like winning at the right moment, having a great result, which he obviously did at Monza. But beyond that, Franz Tost probably has quite a lot of say then in the driver lineup at Scuderia Torro Rosso. Is that what we're saying? Because we assume ultimately it's Helmut Marko and Dietrich Mateschitz.
Yeah, well, I think Marko's the man, isn't he, as far as the young driver program goes, and he definitely has the say on yes or no, whether the driver's on it or off it. I mean, that's a fact. But I think Franz's input is important because he's the guy who ends up having to manage these young guys. And he says he likes working with young drivers and sort of taking this sort of generally fairly raw talent and trying to hone it into something special. So I think if Franz was chatting with Helmut and said, look, I think this guy's really good, it could well have been the deciding factor in taking a punt on a young talent.
It's an interesting choice in many ways as well politically, because this guy's going from, he's been doing F3 and GP3 this year, and he's going straight from that to Formula One. So you kind of say, GP2 World Series? Why do we need it almost? I mean, to put it really bluntly, I mean, you've mentioned Antonio Felix da Costa, a Red Bull driver, recent Red Bull driver over the last 12 months, or 18 months, who's not getting that drive, who was well set to perhaps get it. But beyond that, imagine how Sam Bird feels, for example. Just a good example, you know, there's a guy out there, hard grafter, working at it year after year, winning GP2 races this year. He's vying for the championship, going into Abu Dhabi as a potential champion. Yeah, and a young kid comes in from Formula Renault straight into GP3 and then straight into Formula One. It's kind of turning everything on its head. But it's also an interesting point, isn't it? Because Red Bull do not support GP2 as such. They support World Series. And they got this guy going at GP3, admittedly, but bypassing everything, going straight into Formula One.
Well, I think it shows that they must have some faith in what they've seen with Daniil Kvyat. They won't have done this just on the hoof. And your point about sort of leapfrogging the GP2 level, if you like, yes, it's tough on guys like Sam, but you know, 'twas ever thus. And you know, think about Jensen when he came into F1 straight from F3, and Kimi Räikkönen came straight in from Formula Renault. What was it, 21 car races he'd done, and bang on the pace. And I think if the talent is there, then they'll handle it.
Well, it's got to be recognised as well. That's another point. There's a lot of talented young guys out there who are never recognised, never get that opportunity. We should always say that. And that's one of the tragedies of motorsport. It's about money primarily, getting that drive. It's a capital investment sport. It never is just on talent alone. But of course, there are many precedents for this. Jackie Stewart, you know, did one season of Formula 3 with Ken Tyrrell. Next year he was winning races for BRM. And Chris Amon, Bruce McLaren, 19-year-olds in Formula One. Yeah, we've seen it before and it can happen. And I personally think it's brilliant.
Rubens Barrichello went straight from
probably,
F3, didn't he? I think.
I think it's wonderful. You know, it goes back to this thing about a quick driver is a quick driver. And it actually shows that is visible at Formula Renault GP3, Formula 3 level. And all we need is better visibility for that. And that brings into focus the whole question of why isn't there more publicity around Formula Renault and Formula 3 and GP3? I mean, it's still really difficult to see those races properly. I mean, I was trying to watch the Formula 3 races from Hockenheim at the weekend, and in the United Kingdom, the channel covering them, the picture was all pixelated and all over the place. And it wasn't my TV because all the other stations were working perfectly. But you could live stream it on the internet, which was something, I guess. But you can't even do that with some of the categories, and there's no background information. So anyway, to me, it's a lot of credit there to Red Bull for doing that. I think a lot of people, however, are going to say, yeah, well, if he wasn't Russian, he wouldn't be getting the drive. It's got to be related to Red Bull's potential sales in Russia, Russian Grand Prix coming onto the calendar. And therefore, it's really, really tough on somebody like Da Costa. What's your reaction to that?
Well, that's not entirely untrue. And I think, Red Bull admit the whole program, the whole Formula One program, both teams is a marketing exercise. Everything is ultimately paid for out of a marketing budget. I mean, Red Bull, they make cans of drink, but they're a marketing company. However, I think I would say, and not just because I used to work for the company, they will have ultimately put talent first. I think if it's not just because Danny's Russian, I think the Russian thing may well have helped their thinking, but I'm pretty sure it's because they think they've got a special prospect there. I mean, if you speak to Helmut Marko, he'll always say, what I want to find is another Sebastian Vettel. Well,
he could be that. We just don't know. And it'll be fun and exciting watching him. He'll be jumping from GP3 to Formula One. He's racing GP3 in Abu Dhabi in 2 weeks' time. And he's raced Formula 3 as well. And I know some of the Formula 3 drivers think that he is very good. I was talking to Felix Rosenqvist the other day, and he said, yeah, he is good. He's quick. He's very good in the wet. Felix, of course, is supremely good himself, and another driver that hopefully will get a big opportunity very soon. But it was interesting that at Zandvoort, which has become Felix's home property, really, because it's a difficult driver's circuit still, some quick corners out the back, despite all those chicanes. And Felix won 2 races there, but on the third, he had a red flag on his qualifying lap, so he only started third, and by the time he got up to second, it was too late to pass Daniil. But it was close. He's definitely quick, and he's definitely put a year together that looks good. So we spoke to him to try to get a feel for what he's like and how he feels right now. So we spoke to Daniil. Hello, Daniil. It's Peter Windsor.
Nice to hear you. Yeah.
Well, it's nice to hear your voice too. And let me start just by saying congratulations. I can't imagine what you must feel like right now, but can you just give us an idea of how it felt to wake up this morning?
Well, yeah, I feel good for sure. And this morning I woke up, went to do some physical checkups and tests. So I'm in Austria right now, so it's nice and relaxed atmosphere around me. Luckily, it wasn't like this yesterday, but yeah, I think it's nice. I think, but for sure you start the hard work, and I'm looking forward to start working with Scuderia Torro Rosso.
I'm sure you are. You've done a brilliant job this year in both Formula 3 and GP3, but can I take you back to the young driver test at Silverstone and the build-up to that for you, what it was like in anticipation, and indeed what you thought of the car when you drove it there?
Yeah, for sure, young driver test was really important, and I did 22 laps around Silverstone, and I didn't use soft tires. We ran out of time, but it was a great experience, and I understood that Formula 1 car is also a car that's really, really fast. But I felt like I can be really fast also in the Formula 1 car. So, but yeah, for sure, what has led to the decision to put me in F1 been the results mainly from this year, of course, because we've done a good job with my GP3 team and also with my Formula 3 team, and we showed that we can win in both series, and this was, I think, that's why the decision been taken.
You have done that. Tell us a little bit about the balance when you go to a test like that test at Silverstone, between being conservative, not wanting to make a mistake, but at the same time wanting to make an impression and get the best from the car. How did you approach that very difficult balance?
Well, I wasn't really thinking about that. I wasn't scared to make a mistake, and just pushing to my limit, just as soon as I tried to get there as soon as I could, and there wasn't much time anyway, but yeah, it was, I was just pushing to the limit all the time, to be honest, and wasn't thinking about anything else, just trying to discover the limits of the car, and that's about it. It's like I always try to do with the same, with all the cars. I don't think you have to change your approach too much if it works well so far. You can just tune it all the time to improve, but don't change it completely. It makes no sense.
Daniil, Abu Dhabi is going to be a very interesting, dare I say, fun weekend for you. GP3, you can really enjoy that. Obviously, you want to win that. At the same time, you are the Torro Rosso driver for next year. It's kind of a weird situation for everybody, let alone for you.
Well, yeah, but first of all, I'm a racing driver, and my next race is GP3 race in Abu Dhabi. And yeah, my approach is not going to change. Once again, it's been really successful. It's been working well, and I think that if me and my team Arden will do everything right, if we will do our solid, good job, we will be in front. And for sure, we're going there with one goal to win the championship.
Well, we look forward to seeing that. Can I ask you one final question? Just a little bit about your background, because you live in Italy. I think you speak fluent Italian as well as Russian and English, correct?
Yeah, and a little bit of Spanish as well.
And Spanish, wow. And where did you go to school? Where did the Italian connection come from?
Well, yeah, for sure. When I was younger, when I just started doing international karting, it was all happening in Italy pretty much, and all the best teams were there, and so I spent a lot of time there. I actually moved to live there when I was 12 because for my karting competitions, and
okay.
I went to Italian school for a while. I was spending a lot of time with my Italian team, and I learned it quite quickly, and now I speak it really well. So it's like my second best language, you know.
Brilliant. Are you going to move to Faenza, or are you going to stay in Roma?
Actually, I'm living in Milton Keynes right now.
That's going to have to change then.
Yeah. So I'm also a little bit English. Yeah, I moved there in January. Yeah. In Milton Keynes, and been spending a lot of time there until now. And yeah, now it's a bit of a traveling part of the year. But yeah, I'm going back there tomorrow anyway for some simulations and stuff. And yeah, I think I will keep living in Milton Keynes. That's how the things look for now, probably. And for sure I will visit a lot Faenza.
Well, that's an interesting balance between Milton Keynes and Faenza. I know where I would rather live, but no doubt there's a lot going on in Milton Keynes that we don't know about. And obviously that's where Red Bull are based, so it's a good place for you to be. Thanks so much, Daniil, and all the best there. Don't listen to any of the comments out there. I know you'll just be a race driver and get on with it, and you'll do a very, very good job. Going to be brilliant to watch you next year in the car.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter. Thank you very much.
Take
Goodbye.
care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, I'm sure Daniel's found a few decent Italian restaurants in Milton Keynes. I don't know. Have you hung out in Milton Keynes much?
No, sadly, I couldn't vouch for the Italians though. But,
it's not a bad place to be if you're a racing driver, I suppose.
Yeah, well, Daniil Ricciardo's only just moved away from there, hasn't he? And I think that proximity to the factory was definitely a factor in him being given the nod for the Red Bull racing drive. So I mean, in terms of doing everything you can to elevate yourself in F1, it's got to be a smart move. Well,
it's going to be interesting to see how he goes. Now, this month's issue is now out on the newsstands, I believe. It is. Kimi Räikkönen and Fernando Alonso on the front cover. Kimi versus Fernando, the big story. How have you had any reaction from Ferrari from this one, Anthony?
Yeah, they're not entirely happy with the way we've presented it. I think the line, the dream team that could blow Ferrari apart, may have proven a little sensitive at a sensitive time.
But there's a big conditional there, could.
Yeah, there is a conditional, and the cover line I originally wrote before we committed to press was quite a lot stronger than that. But we.
Well, what was it?
Well, it said will, but we throttled back just a degree. But it's still enough to have annoyed them a little bit. But I mean, that's fine. That's the business. That's how it works.
Well, I wonder why they're annoyed. Because if you
because it's true.
Yeah, exactly. So why are they annoyed about it? It's a great thing that people are talking about it. They're all looking forward to seeing Kimi versus Fernando, or Fernando versus Kimi, whichever way it's going to be. Why should they take?
Well, because as we all know, press departments aren't in the business of promoting the truth as such. They're in the business of promoting the message that they have to promote, and that may be slightly different from what journalists and readers want to know.
You know, that's an interesting point, isn't it? Because what is the message they have to promote? It's actually a message, I think, that they think everybody else is promoting, and we better all do the same thing. And it's this sort of neutralised we are a Formula One team, we cannot have any controversy because it might upset one of our Fortune 500 partners, or it might not look very good on the front page of the Sunday Times. But of course, if you actually eat a dinner with any of these people, or you talk to them in any sort of length, they all say, yeah, well, you know, we love all the publicity and we love the characters and we want the personalities back in the sport. They all want it. But none of them ever actually go out and create it.
Yeah,
or
they don't really want to
happen.
handle it. That's true. It's absolutely true, because it makes their life more difficult.
Well, and we want to know what these people are like. We don't want this sort of bland overview of drivers and teams, and they all say the same thing. You know, it was difficult, or the car was this, or the car. We want real stuff, and we're not getting it. So I can't imagine why Ferrari would be upset about that, because we're saying in the piece, are we not, that if the car is a winning car and the World Championship is there to be won by Ferrari, there's going to be a massive fight between Kimi and Fernando. There's no magic there, we all know that.
And the other thing is, if you look at what happened this year, Luca Di Montezemolo has made no secret of his displeasure with Fernando, and they've been having their internal arguments externally in a very public way. So to comment on that, which is actually all we've done, we've commented on stuff that we know and stuff that is happening and that's out there, is absolutely our prerogative, is absolutely what we should be doing. I mean, that's how you keep a magazine honest, is how any publication works. You write the stories that you know, and we know this stuff, you know, because you do it, I do it, we go to the races and we write about it. And for any team, not just Ferrari, to be uncomfortable when you write stories that you know are true is, it's kind of, you know, without being glib, it's their problem, not ours.
Well, I mean, the corollary of that is for us to be writing about Red Bull that it's going to be a relatively comfortable year for Sebastian Vettel because Daniel Ricciardo's in the other car. Having said that, I noticed a little thing on the front cover that says, "Meet the man who'd topple Jean Todt," and above that, the scorching speed that'll rattle Seb.
Well,
it could. Well, I mean, he is quick, Daniel. There's no question about that.
Well, Dan, I mean, funny enough, I interviewed him for this issue, and the one thing he keeps coming back to is that he, you know, fundamentally he believes he's quick, and that's good. A racing driver should believe that, shouldn't they?
Should believe he's the quickest guy in the world, otherwise he shouldn't be racing.
Yeah, and on that particular point, there's no lack of confidence, and he's going to need every shred of it next year, isn't he? But he believes, and I think he's got every reason to believe it, that he has got the pace to keep Seb honest, and let's hope he has.
Some very nice photographs to go with the Fernando Kimi piece, particularly Teo of the Warrior. That's an interesting approach.
Well, we like this one. It's based on Fernando's continued tweeting of samurai philosophy, which he seems to believe in. He certainly puts it out there to his 1 million+ followers a couple of times a month. Various bits of samurai philosophy that he quotes. So we just took that as the theme for the article, and took various bits of his tweetings, if you like, in the original samurai writings, and analysed whether he actually uses these things in his racing approach. And I think the balance of the piece indicates that he probably does, actually. He's probably quite an adherent to the stuff that he's writing about. And obviously we have a visual treatment that's complementary to that as well.
That's very nice. And we assume Fernando is actually doing those tweets as well.
I've got no reason to believe he doesn't.
No, I mean, some of them quite obviously are not from the driver, but in Fernando's case, because he's actually put out a few naughty ones as well that have upset people, which could only have come from Fernando, so that's always a good sign.
Yeah.
Daniel Ricciardo, that was a nice evening.
It was good.
In Singapore, chatting to him, and what a top man he is.
Yeah.
Good bloke, and I wonder what he thinks about Daniel. The other Daniel, another Daniel.
He put a little tweet out yesterday or the day before, actually saying, you know, welcome to the club, well done, mate. So maybe it's a change from the Seb era, every successful driver being a Sebastian, to it's the Daniel era now.
And I like this feature as well, actually, this rather sad feature about the Red Bull drivers we don't see around anymore. There's a few more we could add to that as well, obviously.
Well, it's a tough school, isn't it, the Red Bull Driver Academy?
Yeah.
I think, you know, on the one hand, they do give chances to young guys.
Yeah.
But man, if you're out, you are out. And it's
Patrick Friesacker, Amel Muller, you know, there's quite a few other guys.
It's pretty hard to recover from that, you know.
Yeah. And if you're a young driver now, and you didn't have a Red Bull deal, you might be saying to yourself, I'm kind of glad I don't. Look what's happened to a few of them. Equally, you're looking at Kvyat and you're saying, look how easy it was for him, ultimately. Easy in the sense of side passing.
Well, the guys that it works for do fantastically well out of it. I mean, Seb Vettel is the ultimate example. There'll probably never be a better example. And Danny Ricciardo at the moment, he's benefiting from it, and Daniil Kvyat.
Yeah.
But you know, if it doesn't work for you, then it's very tough.
It's a nice issue, this, Anthony. I've got to say, I'm not saying this condescendingly. It's a good read. Franz Tost interview. He's always good fun. First met Franz at Macau when he was working for Billy Weber's Formula 3 team. He was team manager. Exactly the same man then as he is now. Hasn't changed in looks, appearance, anything. Just exactly the same guy. I know a lot of people took him to task after the Daniil announcement because there was a slight error in his quote. I think he said that Daniil had won the Formula, the Euro Cup Championship, Renault Euro Cup last year, which of course he didn't. He was runner-up. But, you know, we all make mistakes, and I think it's a little bit churlish of people to do that. Franz is a guy that's been around a long time. He's just totally interested in motor racing, not in any way a glamour seeker.
Yeah,
at
no,
all,
he's just a good bloke. Grinder, isn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. I love this Adrian Newey feature in particular. I mean, it's beautifully done, great interview, lovely story, but I love your succession of photographs here of the Newey.
It's interesting, isn't it?
It's just
it
amazing,
shows you how many winning chassis he's designed. It's remarkable. Is it 20 or 19? Yeah, 19.
And they're all great looking cars as well.
Yeah.
I wonder what Adrian thinks when he looks at that. He's probably not seen, I mean, in his own mind, obviously he has, but he's probably not seen all those cars together like that.
I think they probably circulate in his brain at all times.
Yeah, they probably do. He's probably constantly irritated by the things that he didn't get right.
Yeah.
And
referencing back to the 14B and whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So that's wonderful. And Morris's piece on Jarno I enjoyed very much as well.
Yeah, that was a nice read. He was a very open driver when he was racing, and now he's sort of kicked back and he's running the vineyard. He's just completely open about his career, success and failure at Toyota, things that went well, things that could have gone better, and you just think what a well-balanced guy he is, you know.
I think it's not enough to go down to Pescara for a day or two. I think we should go there for a week and just do a Christmas. That's where the F1 Racing Christmas dinner should be, really. Go down for a week. Jarno can provide all the wine.
Where to get the wine from, that's for sure.
I think it'd be good. Yes, the Anthony Rowlinson interview with David Ward, the man who would topple Jean Todt, as I said earlier.
He's a very interesting character.
Again, conditional.
Well,
that's an interesting use of the conditional there, actually. Who would?
It is.
Would, providing what?
He would if all the stars aligned perfectly for him.
Okay, right.
Because he does want to, and he wants Todd out. I mean, he's been very explicit about that, and the campaign that he's running at the moment is pretty aggressive. I'm quite sure it's causing Jean Todt all sorts of, sort of small headaches. But David is honest enough to admit that actually the way the FIA voting and election structure is structured, the incumbent is almost bound to win. So Jean Todt has virtually no chance of losing because it's almost impossible to mount a campaign against him. But that's one of David's complaints, and by running, he's trying to expose what he sees as some of these flaws. He's a very interesting chap. He's an old school Westminster politician, so he knows how to fight a fight.
It'll be interesting to see what life is like for him if he doesn't win after the election, post comments that he's making about the Todd presidency right now. I can't imagine he'll be comfortable, but equally I'm sure he doesn't mind that much.
He's got a pretty thick skin, I think, actually.
Yeah, he's a professional politician. This Jimmy Clark feature, well, that was quite nice.
Lovely job.
Always nice to get Jim Clark wearing my Jimmy shirt, only because he did clinch his first championship 50 years ago, a couple of weeks ago, so why not?
What would Jimmy be doing now, Peter?
Actually, physically, right now, what would he be doing? 63, 50 years ago, you mean?
No.
Oh,
if he was still with us.
If he was still with us. Oh, I think he'd be... I think he'd probably be going to India, and I think he'd probably be out on the circuit watching, and he'd be picking up a bit of the soil and looking at it and thinking, I wonder if this is farming land that I could possibly do something with. And probably not going into the paddock area, and probably going with some friends to a nice Indian restaurant in the evening, and quite low profile. I mean, Jimmy never liked the glamour and the publicity. It's difficult to imagine, isn't it? But I'm being slightly disingenuous here. But I think, real answer to your question, he was, I think, going to retire pretty soon. He was going to buy an aircraft company, and it was Beagle Aircraft, which I think was Canadian, and they were not doing very well, but they produced some beautiful little light aircraft at that point. I think he was going to go into partnership with Colin on that, and maybe he'd be running that. I think he'd be farming in Scotland. He'd be like Tony Brooks, very dignified, very much the same person that he always was, and but he wouldn't have been seeking any of the money or the glory of modern Formula One. I don't know, it's a difficult one, isn't it? But what he was doing 50 years ago, I do know, he's just nearly won the Riverside Pacific Grand Prix in the RCR in 19, but had to retire, sadly. And now he's heading down to Mexico City for the first ever World Championship Mexican Grand Prix. Interesting, back on the calendar next year. So a bit of coincidence there, but some lovely pictures here of Jimmy, courtesy of LAT, and also Cedric Seltzer. Don't forget, his new book's just been published, wonderful read too, called Jim Clark. Cedric, of course, was his mechanic in '63. So yes, Anthony, thank you very much for that. Indian Grand Prix this weekend, full of excitement, bated breath. What's going to happen? Don't look so bored.
Well, I do think, Roman's showing in Japan was very strong.
Good point.
Who knows what Lewis would have done if he hadn't been nerfed at T1. It's hard to see beyond a Red Bull win, of course, but I don't think it's a signed up, totally finished deal. I don't think Ferrari are in the picture now. McLaren obviously aren't. But another Lotus win, absolutely not out of the question. And if it's Roman, all the better. It'd be lovely to see a guy take his first win. And if it's Lewis, or Nico, or Kimi, or any of those
what
guys.
What about Aussie Gridman?
Or Mark,
Well, I still can't get over the fact that he didn't win the Japanese Grand Prix, actually, but there you go.
Yeah, I think that he's going to take that one away with him, and it might spoil his winter a bit, actually.
Yeah, you get the pole at Suzuka. I mean, that's hard work. Not hard, it's hard physically, but it's hard work. It's a great circuit, and to actually do a pole there is impressive. And it's just disappointing. So, India, I don't know whether India is Mark's sort of circuit, by which I mean Mark goes really well on difficult, tough, gritty circuits, not necessarily Tilke super circuits, but equally anything could happen. And I presume Seb might be driving for points. Do you think he might or not? He's got such a margin.
He'll go flat out to win it. I think that's the way he wants to win it.
It's a stupid comment, Windsor. He'll never do that.
And to be fair, I don't wish to sound remotely anti-Seb. He's done an amazing job. He has done the job this season that every racing driver aspires to do, hasn't he? So, fair play to him. If it's 4 on the bouncers, it's almost certainly bound to be this weekend.
And I don't think it's
all credit
right.
to him.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I don't think it's right for anybody to say that this is boring, or Seb is boring, or the racing is boring because of Seb. If it's boring now, it's because nobody else has done the same job, but much more importantly, it's because we're not making the racing interesting enough. And I come back to my other point, which is that Tiger Woods can win a golf tournament by 11 shots and make it unbelievably boring in terms of the competition, and yet it'll be compelling television because everybody wants to watch it, and the television coverage of golf is so good. And it behoves us as a sport, if there is this situation, it could easily happen again next year where the championship's decided 5 races from the end of the year. We need to make sure that it's still compelling viewing, and we don't have enough behind the scenes access during the week or over the race weekends or over the winter to these guys, and we need more, and that's where the interest is going to be sustained.
That's kind of where we started, wasn't it? Talking about control of the media in F1. So.
Yeah, and it's wrong. And when you control the media to this extent, it does become boring if the championship is over so soon. That's why we need to open up the access for the media. Right, nobody knows India better than, well, I'm sure a few people do, but he knows it pretty well. Karun Chandhok, our friend here on the show, race driver, TV commentator, whatever, he knows it. And so I spoke to Karun about the Indian Grand Prix. Well, going there this weekend, obviously, but it's not on the calendar next year, very, very sadly. A lot of money spent on that circuit. And it's a wonderful country, great opportunity there for Formula One to expand, and yet it's not happening in 2014. So I spoke to Karun about that and the opportunities and the prospects, perhaps, of getting the Grand Prix back on the calendar in 2015. Karun, thanks for joining us. I know you're just about to set off for your home Grand Prix. As last year, I wish I could say, best of luck racing in the Indian Grand Prix. Sadly, you're not doing that, but I know you'll be a very busy boy with TV commitments and various other stuff going on. What are your thoughts about the future of the race? 22 races scheduled in 14, no India on the calendar there.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously not ideal for us to be missing next year. The first thing to say is there is genuine effort being made to come back for 2015. As you mentioned, there's already 22 slots filled up for next season. So therefore, even going forward, who knows? There's question marks about Korea we hear about New Jersey, about Bahrain. There's various question marks. So we'll see, first of all, if there's a slot in 15. That's the first hurdle to cross. There are various administrative things we need to work on with the government as well back in India. So that process is ongoing. As you know, my dad and I are both very involved with the Indian Grand Prix. And we'll just keep plugging away. And I mean, the good thing is both Bernie and the promoters do want to carry on from 2015. The inclination is there. Neither side wants to back out of it without a fight. So we'll do the best we can to get back on the calendar.
Now, it's easy for us to say, looking from afar, there just hasn't been the support from within the country for Formula One. But can you give us a little bit more of an idea of what the problems have been and why there is this problem? I mean, your face is very well known now on a global basis. We have Narain as well. We've got the Force India Young Driver Academy. You're doing lots for young kids in India as well. You would imagine the momentum would have caught by now.
Yeah, it's a funny situation, Peter. I mean, the issue with the race itself is more government related. As you know, most races around the world are backed by governments. I think Suzuka, I believe, is still privately funded, as of course is the BRDC at Silverstone, and India. But apart from that, everything else is government funded. And I think, what people need to understand is obviously India is a country with enough other socio-economic issues, and Formula One is quite low down on the priority list for sport. But where the issue also lies is that the government themselves don't recognize Formula One as a sport, somewhat bizarrely. We're classified as entertainment and as an adventure sport. So, while that might sound, it's, a bit of PR spiel, it isn't. It actually leads to various other repercussions in terms of laws, in terms of importing the cars, in terms of visas for the personnel coming through, in terms of taxation issues, various things like that. So there's a few hurdles that need to be crossed. It helps now that the FIA has been recognized by the International Olympic Committee. Hopefully that'll filter down to India as well. And if we can get the government to recognize us as a sport, automatically that opens up channels to import hardware for the young drivers in India and also, of course, Formula One.
And how much of a role can you and your dad play in that? It sounds like an incredibly difficult red tape-ish operation. Yeah. And I don't envy the task of anybody trying to take that on with the government, because we all know how bureaucratic it is there. But at the same time, are we making any progress in that area?
I think so. I think we are. I mean, I think timing-wise, it's quite bad for us because we have our general elections coming up in April of 2014. So, therefore, that all of that sort of got together and contrived against having the race next year. So, once the elections are out of the way, we'll understand a bit more who the new sports ministries are, what the new, if there is a new government coming through, what their thoughts are on Formula One and as a sport. So, as you rightly pointed out, it's not a short-term quick fix. It's a process that has to happen over a period of weeks and months. And, we just got to keep plugging away at it.
And Karun, the short-term result of all this, apart from the race, is that when you do what racing drivers do and have done, and you go to your country, try to get sponsorship, trying to get backing to get into Formula One, what sort of responses are you getting or not getting?
I mean, obviously, when I raced in 2010 and 11, I had a reasonable response, but not quite enough. I think Narain was very lucky that he had the Tata Group backing him. They did a great job to support him. But without them as one company, he would have had no chance to take over my seat in 2011, which he did. So it has been difficult. I think. Also, what hasn't helped is in the last sort of 6-7 months, probably even a year, the Indian economy has had a little bit of a slowdown. We've got a big problem with inflation, and also our domestic currency, the rupee, has gone down quite heavily compared to the rupee, euro, and the dollar. So again, it's quite difficult to get budgets out of India right now for racing drivers. But on the plus side, the interest is still there. We still have terrific interest in motorsport and in Formula One and all forms of motorsport really. So and hopefully once the economy picks up again, we can get these people back in. But we've been slightly out of sync, I think, to the West. Obviously Western economies had a massive slowdown, over the last 4 or 5 years even, and we're slightly out of sync, I think. Unfortunately, the timing hasn't quite worked out for myself in terms of, as you know, get budgets in place to do F1 is very difficult at the moment.
Is it fair to say that the infrastructure is now about where the best we could expect it to be, and the rest of it is kind of up to bureaucracy in the economy? We have a lot more feeder categories. We have more Indian drivers, young Indian drivers out there on the local and the world stage. Do we need to do a lot more in India? And can Formula One do more in India in the meantime, in this fallow year ahead of them?
I think I'd hate to think that this is where we peaked in terms of infrastructure. I hope we could keep developing more. We've now got Volkswagen, Toyota, people like Mahindras and Tata, who are big, strong Indian companies, all getting involved in Indian motorsport. On the bike side, we've got 4 or 5 big manufacturers now involved on the bikes as well. So, and rallying is picking up again, which really suffered quite badly, more than racing for a while in India. So it is getting better, but we're still a long way away, Peter. Yes, it's wrong to compare us with people like the UK or Germany or even America, because we're, a long way behind in terms of time. I think it's fair to compare us with China and Malaysia and places like that, where they have already a lot more racing. I think possibly the knowledge and the interest level is much higher in India, but we don't yet have the same level of racing in terms of categories and number of races or circuits that they have in some other countries. So, we'll just keep plugging away. And as you know, in everywhere else in the world, it's down to the manufacturers. The more the manufacturers can support the sport, the more it will grow. And we've seen it in Europe, whether it's Renault or BMW or Mercedes, all these companies coming through, and the whole VW, Audi group, recently, even in GT racing stuff. I think that needs a big push in India as well.
Well, I hope that's focused around your endeavours in racing as well. Can you just give us an idea of your thoughts for your own program in 2014?
Yeah, to be honest, I've really enjoyed sports car racing. It's a big change going away from the single-seater route, and obviously having won races in GP2 and raced in F1, to go away from that was a huge change. But now, having done Le Mans twice, I think that I've well and truly been bitten by the bug. It's a fantastic type of racing to do it, because the cars are really challenging. So I'd like to go back to do more Le Mans in prototypes. I'm speaking to some teams to do the European Le Mans or WEC programs along with Le Mans next year, and a couple other little projects in the pipeline as well, which hopefully will come out soon. So enough to keep me out of trouble.
What do you think about Formula E electric racing cars? And what, more importantly, I suppose, trying to be a little bit more serious, what do you think India would think about that, in the same way that perhaps China might embrace it? I don't know. But do you think the Indians will like the idea of that? Or do you think they like lots of fuel burning, rubber burning, motor racing?
I think Formula E in concept, I think, is very interesting. If you look at the Frankfurt Motor Show, for example, every big manufacturer announced that they want to do more hybrids and electrics between now and 2018. I think there's a lot of emphasis coming towards that type of, just in the automotive sector, for example, that type of cars. Racing, I think it's a very interesting concept, what they're talking about, to race on city streets. I think that the promoter, Alejandro Agag's been very honest about saying, look, we're not Formula One. We're not competing with World Series or GP2 or any of these things. We're doing our own thing. We're new. We're doing something completely different. And it's fascinating because the technology involved is, I think you're going to see big evolution here, like we saw, in F1 with combustion engines, for example, through the 70s and 80s. I think battery technology is going to get more and more efficient and powerful, as are the motors. So it's a fantastic concept. And, I think there are people in India who are very interested in it. And we'll see if we can get it all to work.
Well, that would be a lot of fun. Look forward to that. And we'll look forward to seeing you in something competitive next year, much more importantly, Karun. And we missed you on the racetracks, but it's always good to see you around in the paddock and doing your work in the media. You do an outstanding job. Thanks so much for talking to us. Safe travels to India, and we'll talk to you again very soon.
All right, Peter. Thank you.
Karun Chandhok, well, let's hope there is a 2015 Indian Grand Prix again, because all that infrastructure is there. It's a question of India not seeing Formula One as an industry, but seeing it as a sport. And beyond that, we have 2 Indian Formula One drivers, and we have lots of young drivers coming up. Force India have just, they started this driver academy last year. And interesting to see Jahan Daruvala, young Indian, has just won the British karting championship. He's going to be in karts again next year, but good luck to Force India for doing that. And we don't see that happening with Korea particularly, or other new frontier Formula One countries. So, yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts on India, Anthony?
On the Grand Prix?
Yeah, on the Grand Prix.
I think it's sad that it's going. I think it was a very bold step for F1 to go there. I'm sure there was a financial incentive for F1 to arrive, and I'm sure that's what's underneath the fact that it'll be off the calendar next year. Most things in F1, as we know, in terms of calendar dates, they come around to is the money there or not. And for some reason, the money doesn't appear to be there next year. And I think also you've got that problem that once a Grand Prix goes off the calendar, it's awfully hard to come back onto it. I mean, France being the sort of most obvious example, really. I think India might have a lot of trouble getting back onto the calendar.
Well, Karun seems relatively buoyant. Let's hope that it does come back. It'd be a great loss for Formula One, I think, if they permanently had to race without India. I thought you'd like this, Anthony. I think you'll all like this. Retro liveries of an existing Formula One car, which we think is probably a Williams. It just that's the other point. If every car on the grid was painted plain white, how many people would be able to identify every car? Yeah. Anyway, I love these. Look at the Tyrrell there. It's just
absolutely
perfect.
beautiful,
It looks superb. And then got the Brabham in martini colours.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that works quite as well, the horizontal stripe through the middle of the car, but it's...
The red version might be interesting.
Yeah, the red martini
version.
one.
Yeah.
Or maybe if they pinstripe the edges, a bit like the 1974 car. I love that. Gold leaf Team Lotus.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
For those of the... I actually preferred gold leaf always to black and gold anyway, but I was probably in the minority.
Massive
there.
numbers on it as well.
Massive
big
number.
roundels.
And I love the way the gold leaf square rectangle fits exactly on the side there. That doesn't look a lot different, does it, the Jordan?
No, it looks like it could just be yesterday, really.
Yeah, which I suppose all credit to Eddie and the boys there for being futuristic. Michael Schumacher's Benetton there.
Yeah.
Martin Brundle's for that matter.
That, again, doesn't really look...
No.
It looks very familiar, doesn't it? Very recent.
No. I love the way they've got the Pirellis on as well, and everything's perfect.
Yeah.
That's great, isn't it, the Hesketh?
Yeah.
That looks just perfect, doesn't it?
Bang on.
What a wonderful thing to have colour schemes like that again.
Yeah.
And then
sadly it'll never happen.
Marlboro McLaren, wow.
Maybe this is the sponsor announcement that they're holding back for December the 2nd.
December 2, isn't it?
Maybe this is the big surprise.
Well, yeah, it's going to be December 2, McLaren announcing their new title sponsor for the next 3 or 4 years. So we're looking forward to that very much. And then finally, look at that. Wow, the Williams.
Yeah.
When we did that colour scheme initially, we had the blue stripe, the mobile stripe, as it was then, angled. But it works very nicely there, doesn't it? Works beautifully.
Looks fantastic. They'd kill for that bunch of sponsors now, wouldn't they?
They would. They would. I wonder still, I don't know if we've heard any rumours there. Do you think Pastor's going to stay at Williams?
I read a story this week on AP saying that the Venezuelan government has initiated a corruption investigation into all the overseas sports sponsorship that PDVSA has undertaken, including one particular driver who is unnamed but who gets $60 million worth of Venezuelan government money. And there can only be one man who that applies to. Now, that's obviously not to say that Pastor has anything to do with any corruption investigation. Be very explicit about that. But if this is happening in Venezuela, it does mean that perhaps the funding that PDVSA puts into F1 could stop. It doesn't make comfortable reading for any driver.
That was always going to be the downside to doing a deal with that sort of government and that sort of situation. We won't go into too much detail there, but I did ask Frank Williams the straight question last week about Pastor, and he said definitively under contract for the next, I think he said 2 years. Certainly next year, that's for sure. But we'll see. If he still has the same budget, he's a fast racing driver with some downsides, but he's a fast racing driver with a huge budget, so he'll be in big demand. And even if he is under contract, I suppose. But anyway, we'll see.
Grand Prix winner.
Yeah. And speaking of Pastor, actually, not only Grand Prix winner, but unbelievably good reflexes. Well, I think he has. because at the Williams Partner Day that was at Brands a couple of weeks ago, they had a very interesting, I thought it was interesting anyway, reflex test, which was basically the Formula One steering wheel with a paddle, and you pressed a button and the 5 start lights came on, and then at different intervals they went out, and then you had to release the clutch pedal, and immediately your reaction time came up. And I worked away at this. I was quite pleased with the fact that I got it down to 0.16. And I say that because I know that most Formula One engineers would say that anything below 0.2 is pretty good. And I'm sure it was easier. Anyway, I thought it was all great. And then Pastor came up and did 3 of them, all under 1.6, and ended up with a 0.039. Right, so that kind of ended my day for me. I put it down as a fluke. But one interesting thing was that when he was doing it, he was watching the red lights. He said he always watches all the lights rather than just one of them. Apropos nothing at all. But when he was releasing it, whereas I would just go like that, as I think most of us would, he was going like that and pulling it sideways all the time, and doing a much faster flick release of the pedal. And I asked him later if he does that in the Formula One car actually, and he said yeah, he does a sideways movement when he's actually doing that reaction release for the clutch pedal. So I never knew that. I always imagined it was a forward release.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
As you were at the Williams Day, how was the body language between Pastor and Valtteri Bottas after their last lap dust-up in Suzuka?
It was all right, actually. Yeah, I think... I don't know if it was the passage of time, i.e. 2 days or 3 days later, whatever it was. Although we were sitting with Pat Simmons and they wanted some questions for the drivers. And actually it was Jimmy said, I think I'll ask Bottas what he thought about the last corner of the last lap. And Pat Simmons immediately said, I think you should ask Pastor the same question. It'd be really good, wouldn't it? But there didn't seem to be any aggravation going on, to be honest. They both seemed to be incredibly relaxed and just enjoying being there. And I don't think it was put on. I think race drivers, Formula One drivers, enjoy that sort of thing, being with the sponsors, being with a few friends, and just driving them around the circuit and scaring them and doing all the things they do. It's good fun. And then one of the other things they had there actually, and we just put a little package together for you, is a drone TV camera. And this is a picture of the drone here, which is hovering over the Brands Indy Club circuit. I thought it was just brilliant. I know we've seen this before with some of the TV networks, they've been experimenting with it, but actually to see it up close and personal. And here are some of the shots that it produced, and good stuff. I think we should get one of these drones, and Haymarket should finance one, and we should have it fly into the Formula One paddocks inside the motorhomes, and whenever we see 2 interesting people having a discussion, we can just sort of drone down and just too high for them to reach. Yeah,
I think Bernie might take a view, don't you?
Well, it'd be quite fun, wouldn't it, watching him pointing at the drone and trying to get it, getting Pasquale to try and shoot it down or whatever.
Well, you buy it, I'll fly it. How about that?
Well, I think buying it's just a start from what I gather, which may be one of the reasons we don't see them too often at races, and that's because you have to get permission from the local airport, and probably from the local Air Force, actually to fly these things, because they go quite high. But what pictures they produce. I mean, this is a whole new world of looking at lines, and also indeed looking at cockpit inputs from the driver. You could really close in on that and get some wonderful digital shots. So I was very taken by that. Right, we've got still a bit to go on with the show, so we'll go on without any delay, and that is to look back at the weekend, because we had a lot going on, a lot of championships were defined. Kevin Magnussen secured the World Series by Renault by winning both races at Barcelona. He secured it in the first race and enjoyed his win the next day as well. So congratulations to Kevin. We've had him on the show a couple of times. He really deserved that. And let's hope we see him in Formula One very soon. I think there's still a slight chance we might see him next year, but we'll have to wait and see what's going on there. And the young Italian, Raffaele Marciello, has been a Ferrari Academy driver now for a couple of years. He didn't win the Euro F3 Championship last year. That was won by Juncadella. But this year he did do it. It went to the last round. Felix Rosenqvist, the brilliantly talented Swede, took him all the way. Rosenqvist drives for Mucca, Marciello for Prema Power Sports. But in terms of good points finishes, Marciello sewed it up and he won at Hockenheim. So we had a quick chat to him on the phone, and we spoke to him just after he had, from Hockenheim, gone to Barcelona to do his first tests in a World Series by Renault car. Raffaele, congratulations. A difficult weekend at Hockenheim with the weather we had, particularly on Sunday, but good for you. You got the job done on the Saturday.
Yeah, Thursday was a good day for us. I won the championship, and yeah, we had a really good battle all the season with Felix, and for sure he did a really good job, because he didn't have a good teammate for compare telemetry and everything. So for sure he deserves also the title.
We are big fans here on the show of Luca Baldassarri and everything he's doing with the Ferrari Driver Academy. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what it's been like for you working with Luca?
Yeah, they did what I need. Like, for example, if I need more mental, they will do more mental training. If I need more exercise in gym, they will do more gym. So it's like they work for me, yeah, and they do what I need.
And you've just got out of World Series test. Tell us about that. How was that car compared with Formula 3?
Yeah, it's a big F3. It's really good to drive, really fun. Yeah, a lot of power, but also a lot of downforce. So it's very a pleasure to drive this car, and it's like a big F3, so it's easy to adapt my drive to this car.
And you're going to have an outing shortly in the Ferrari Formula 1 car. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it will be for sure a fantastic opportunity. I am Italian, so it will be fantastic to drive a Ferrari car, an F1 car.
What do you think about the possibility of another Italian driving for Ferrari again? We haven't had that for a while now. It would be nice, eh?
Yeah, I don't think now to F1. I'm young and to learn something. So we will see, but for sure would be, I think, fantastic also for the fans, but also for me to, if I will become an F1 driver with Ferrari.
What do you think about Daniil Kvyat getting the Torro Rosso drive? How surprised were you to hear that news?
I think if he is in Formula 1, also Felix, me, or Lynn, everybody to beat him, to serve F1, but he is lucky to be there, and I think he will do a good job for sure, but I think is a lot of motor drivers deserve F1.
And I suppose, as you say, from your point of view, it means if he goes well in Formula 1, you can do the same job, if not better.
Yeah, I did better, also Felix, so it's like, he's lucky to be there, yeah.
And finally, Raffaele, Formula 3 Euro season in 2013, the championship looked very good, very competitive. What was it like from your point of view, the camaraderie, the fun? How much did you enjoy this year?
Yeah, it was really hard with me and Felix. We were both really fast in every track, and we had some good battles. For sure, it was a really difficult year because 30 race, you need to be fast in every circuit and like not every grid. So every race is good for score points or bad for lose a lot of points. So it's important to keep focus all the season.
Yeah, great consistency and great job too from Prema Powersport to provide you with that consistency. Well, congratulations again. We look forward to seeing you racing in 2014 in something bigger and quicker. We know you will be, and it'll be a lot of fun. Well done.
Yeah, for sure. Also next year will be a good championship. Like F3 is famous now, so those drivers will want to come there.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Raffaele. All the best for your plans, and we'll talk to you again very soon. Thank you.
Thank you soon. Ciao. Grazie.
Ciao. Grazie. Ciao. And congratulations to France's Pierre Gasly for securing the 2013 Renault Eurocup. That's the championship in which our friend Daniil Kvyat finished runner-up in 2012. Good. It was an interesting race, actually. He was on the pole in Barcelona. He was the points leader, but Oliver Rowland, the young Brit who's financed by Racing Steps, was the other championship contender and was one of these championship things. And he went for a gap, and Pierre closed the door. It was a shunt, and Oliver got a drive-through, and Pierre recovered to finish sixth and win the championship. And Oliver said later, well, I had to go for it. Championship was there. A little bit like the final of the World Series by Renault last year between Bianchi and Robin Frijns. It seems a long time ago now, doesn't it? Robin Frijns, a name we're not mentioning very often, but we're interested to see what happens to him. Let's hope he gets a drive worthy of his talent as well. And at the weekend over in Japan, in a very wet race, Toyota finally run around of the 2013 World Endurance Championship. Good to see. Alex Wurz, Nicolas Lepierre and Kazuki Nakajima, of course, are former two Williams Formula One drivers there. And so it was a good opportunity to catch up with Alex in his office in Monte Carlo, talk to him about that win and also about what he thought of Daniil Kvyat securing that drive at Torro Rosso. Alex, good to talk to you. I haven't spoken to you for a while, actually, a couple of months, but congratulations on that win in Japan. Must have been a huge event for Toyota, and I know the weather came into it, I know the red flag came out, I know there was luck, but nonetheless for Toyota to win in Japan, very nice.
No, well, first welcome Peter, thanks for having me, always nice to chat to you. Yeah, the win in Fuji of course is nice, it's a little bit like Christmas and the birthday present coming at the same time, but equally we've been the one not doing the mistake, having the right tires, so we were in the lead position behind the safety car when the race was red flagged. Could have been all the 30 other cars doing that, so yes, very lucky, but you take the wins as they come.
You do, and tell us a little bit about the season so far and the car and the development of the car. You've shown flashes, not you but the team, of a lot of speed on occasions.
Yeah, well, usually I don't flash, just to make it clear. But when we talk about the Toyota program, I think we have to start last year, when we wanted actually to come in only halfway through the season with testing and maybe the odd race in the end of the season. But then Peugeot withdrawn, we had to come in very early and a little bit rushed, just to help the series to take off as a World Championship event. And I think we've done so in really great style. In the end of the season, we have won 3 from 4 races, and then due to these amazing results, beating Audi at their own game. I mean, you talk from Audi is the dominator of sports car racing in the last decade. Everyone had really high expectations of Toyota, including myself, including the team. And then it came to the beginning of 2013 season, and we had to realize that Audi really raised their game, and we've dropped behind in the performance a little bit, but enough to be on the back foot in the racing. And that is pretty much the picture of the whole season, that we challenged them, but it's always difficult for us to beat them. Hence we had until the Fuji race no race win. Audi has won every race so far, including the most important race, which is Le Mans.
Alex, it's a bit of a boom time for sports cars now, because obviously we have Porsche coming in next year with Mark Webber. How do you think that'll go?
Well, I'm very happy that new manufacturers are looking into sports car racing, because I mean, we all agree that Formula One is the pinnacle of the sport, and it maybe will always be, and it should be. But we need other sports. So sports car racing, extremely traditional, very heroic, and to have more manufacturers coming is just what the sports need. So to answer your question, Porsche coming is cool, really great, and if drivers like Mark, I mean he is a top runner, front runner in Formula One, decides to come to sports cars, it's really cool for the sport. It's nothing else than extremely beneficial, and I look forward to racing because he's a cool lad, a really good driver, and always fair and square. So I think for the sport, great boost.
Alex, you're always a busy boy. You've always got things on the go. How many days a year, if we could talk about it that way, does it involve working for Toyota, racing for Toyota, testing for Toyota?
Well, you, as a race driver, it's not only the times you spend away from home. These days, I would say, is good question. I would say maybe around 100 days, 80 to 100 days. with all the promotion, simulator sessions, technical meetings, tests, and races. But it's almost every day of your life you live as a race driver. That starts with your nutrition, with the way you approach a day, from the training. Your whole lifestyle has to be about racing. And being a full factory racer in a FIA World Championship event, you're nothing else than a full professional race driver. And that's how I see it actually.
Alex, you've done a lot of work, a lot of good work with the FIA on the development of young drivers. Big news this week, Daniil Kvyat, the young Russian, going effectively from Formula 3, GP3 straight into Formula 1 with Scuderia Torro Rosso. What are your thoughts on that?
I was watching that kid a while ago actually, and he did really well in GP3. He impressed me that even in hot race conditions with lots of guys around him, he still, had a very good three-dimensional vision, kept the front wing on the car, and did really fast lap times. So I thought, oh, that's a good guy. That's a very promising young talent coming out of Russia, which I think is really good for the entire sport. If such a great nation, a great market, a potential market for sponsors, for motorsport, for the entire industry, brings great talent out coming into F1. I thought that's always good, and then it happened basically overnight. So a bit of a surprise, I think, not only to me, also to everyone else in the industry, but in terms of the timeline, not in terms of his talent. I think he has shown that he's very fast. So he has a really great chance at hand to go in with Torro Rosso. As Peter, to ride next year, it will be with a Renault engine. It will be very close to the Red Bull car, from the gearbox, the drivetrain. So I think he had a great chance at hand, and wish him good luck, and hopefully he can take the chance.
Sorry, Anthony, one more question, yeah.
Alex, just going back to the Toyota for a second. I spoke to you earlier in the year, and you mentioned that the power system, the capacitors that are on the engine and on the drivetrain, was one of the best bits of technology you've ever raced. Could you just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, apologies sent to Adrian Newey. I drove a few of his cars, but the best thing in motor racing so far, I have to say, is the capacitor hybrid system of Toyota. Because from the word go, it functioned. The power output it has is phenomenal. It's very consistent, has no degradation in power whatsoever. And the kick you get into your rear end out of the corners is just amazing. I mean, you talk of quite a few hundred horsepower with a lot of torque, very well to control. It is really a joy every time you put the foot down. And the best compliment for our Toyota system is the fear in the faces of the Audi drivers whenever we come out of slow-speed corners. They say that there is no way you can keep up with a Toyota out of the corners because of the hybrid system.
Here's a thought, Alex, a closing thought. If you run two cars next year, I'd tell you one driver that I'm sure would accept an invitation to do all the races and to do long stints, particularly Le Mans, and that would be Adrian Newey himself. I'm sure he'd love to drive that car.
Okay, but he has to be a bait driver because his record on causing some carbon damage is on the high side. Let's put it like this.
Great to talk to you, and very best of luck in the upcoming events and everything you're doing in your life there, and best wishes to you and all the family.
Thank you, Peter. Thanks, Anthony. Thanks for having me. Bye.
Thanks, Alex. Alex Wurz, always fun to spend a bit of time with Alex. Mate of yours too, Anthony.
Yeah, he's become quite a good friend actually over the years, and he's a very interestingly connected guy in the paddock, inside and outside the paddock. Has quite a lot of dealings with the FIA, the Young Driver Academy. Obviously, he's still a very active racing driver. He's got a number of his own businesses going on. Future team principal, I think, and behind the scenes, he's quite influential in moving some senior figures from one team to another, without naming any names. One of the biggest technical transfers last year was largely brokered by Alex.
And I think, speaking of brokering, we've got a feature coming up in an upcoming issue of F1 Racing, the power top 20 or something?
In our next issue, we list the 20 most powerful people in Formula One, and Alex gets a mention actually in that little list because of reasons that I've just sort of alluded to. But there are 1 or 2 surprises in there actually. That's all I'm going to say at this stage.
Well, a few years ago I had to write, actually it's the only, well, I do, people say I write a lot of fiction, I'm sure they do, but I actually went out to deliberately write some fiction a few years ago, and that was about what the Formula One world would be like, I don't know when it was going to be, in 2020 or something. And I had Alex as the president of the FIA, so it'd be interesting to see whether that
Well, I think 2015, no, hold on, what would it be, 2017? 2017, 2021, let's see.
Yeah, let's see. 21, Zager and Evans, that was a good rock song. I know we're still in the a long way to go, but nonetheless, just made me think of that. I remember in the year 25, that's what it was, Zager and Evans. And the only reason I mentioned that is because it was played around the time of the 64 International 100 at Warwick Farm, after which Jack Brabham had just won again at the farm. And so whenever I think of that green and gold Brabham, I think of Zager and Evans in the year 25.
Soundtrack to your life.
That's really good information for you. We've got to close now, but I love closing now with some emails that we get. And this one I know you're going to like, Ant. Not many people could write an email like this. This is from Dan Gerber, who we've mentioned before on the show, wonderful author, writer, and former Cobra racer in America. And this is about my blog and talking about the Glen Motor Inn when I was describing Jim Clark's 63 US Grand Prix, which has just happened at Watkins Glen. We're talking about the Glen Motor Inn. And Daniel wrote in and he said, your mention of the Glen Motor Inn took me back to the fall of 64. I'd been racing at Mosport, and Bruce McLaren, who was certainly one of the kindest and most considerable people in memory, said, why not come down to the Glen next weekend and join us for the Grand Prix? Of course I was thrilled and accepted. Bruce really liked Cobras, as he called them. And I think that's because Americans call them Cobras. And when he introduced me, would say he races Cobras. So I spent a lovely weekend in the fall with Bruce, Pat, Jochen Rindt at the Glen Motor Inn, and Saturday evening we piled in a car with Jim Clark and Graham Hill and went to dinner. I remember sitting with Graham Hill in the back seat and that we talked a lot about flying. In 65 I was at the Glen to drive Shelby cars around the track in recognition of Ford's winning the Manufacturers' Championship, and I took Lorenzo Bandini for a parade lap in a Daytona Coupe, the same one I believe which I co-drove with Bob Wonderen in the TT at Goodwood in 2004. Nice email to write that, isn't it? Yeah. Not many people could say that, Dan. Thank you very much for that. That is something. I'd also like to just mention my mate Ernie Black, who's done that wonderful book on poetry, Formula One poetry. If you haven't seen that, go online. He's the F1 poet. He's done some great stuff for us over the years. And a big thank you to everybody at F1 Racing, to Anthony Rowlinson, to all our guests on the show, to Knockout, and to you, the race fans around the world, for supporting the show. Remember to like us on Facebook, to follow us on Twitter, and to look at our YouTube channel on a regular basis because we have so much content there building up as I speak. See you all again next week as we look back at that Indian Grand Prix and ahead, of course, to Abu Dhabi, where it's not only the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, but it's also the GP2 and GP3 finales. Can't wait. Thank you for watching.